Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1966 melodrama Single Room Furnished, starring the iconic 1950s sex symbol Jane Mansfield. And the film begins with a young woman named Maria arguing with her overbearing mother. The mother is concerned that Maria is bringing shame to the family by associating with another tenant in the building by the name of Eileen. Eileen, you see, is a prostitute. After the argument, Maria leaves the apartment and strikes up a long conversation with the building's janitor, Pop. He tells her a pair of stories about previous tenants of the building. First, the troubled relationship of Frankie and Johnny and how the former walked out on the latter when she was pregnant. And then the tale of Charlie, Flo and May, and how Charlie planned to marry May because she had been abandoned while pregnant, but ultimately realised that he loved Flo and married her instead. Now, if you've worked out from that summary that May and Johnny were the same woman, and that they are also both Eileen, then congratulations. You can skip this film and the gloomy concluding sequence where we get an insight into Eileen's current life, because you've already figured it out, basically. That final sequence is gloomy because this is ultimately a cautionary morality tale framed around an old woman explaining to a young woman that the exciting life of her neighbour is not the bed of roses she imagined it to be. Now, I have some fairly major issues with the movie's entire thesis. Sex work is work, and there's nothing intrinsically immoral or wrong with it. Whereas running out on your pregnant partner, on the other hand, that shows moral failing. Though, of course, the movie, which is written by a man, makes no judgments about that. But even setting aside the puritanical, patriarchal, you better be a good girl messaging, this is just not a very good film. I'll talk about why that is in a moment. First, though, let's talk about the leading lady, or at least the top billed one. Very much the name player on the film's cast list is Jane Mansfield. Mansfield had enjoyed major box office success in the mid-50s, generally in lightweight comedy roles, and intermittent successes thereafter. She was not ashamed to use her looks to her advantage. She appeared in a Playboy pictorial in 1955, and in 1963 became the first mainstream Hollywood star to do a topless scene in the film Promises. Despite a number of successful roles, however, continued and respectable, quote-unquote, success eluded Mansfield. In the late 50s and very early 60s, she was seen as something that has been, with Fox Studios happily send her off to Italy and the UK for cheapy productions there. Promises was a big success, but it would ironically prove to be a false promise of renewed popularity. Mansfield passed on the first opportunity to arise from it, due to a pregnancy, which had been a recurring problem for her in getting her career to consistently go well. And she never found a way back into the limelight after that sort of one last hurrah. This film, directed by her then husband, Matt Kimber, was an attempt to prove that she had more to offer than just a big bosom and an alluring smile. The film was not a success, at least in part because of the movie's other issues. And Mansfield would never get another opportunity. She died in a car accident in 1967. That event actually led to this film's original theatrical release being cut short. It didn't get reissued until 1968, and that is why you may see it listed under that year instead of 1966 in some places. I've gone with the year that IMDb has on it. So that's a little bit about Mansfield. Never quite achieved the success that she might have done, never quite became the icon that a Marilyn Monroe did. And unfortunately, like Marilyn Monroe, died young. For all that Mansfield is top billed, however, she's not actually in the film all that much. She's not in any of the scenes featuring Maria, for instance, and she's also absent for a large chunk of the Charlie, Flo and May story, as that segment spends far more time on Charlie and Flo than it does on Mansfield's multi-named character. Now, I actually enjoyed those Charlie and Flo sequences. I thought they were some of the best parts of the movie because the two actors in them were quite likeable and their extremely awkward courtship was rather sweet. But when I look at them and the other issues of the movie, they highlight a structural issue with the film, and that is that Single Room Furnished is adapted from a play and not well. The whole movie is almost entirely composed of scenes where two people talk to one another. In fact, with enough wigs and outfit changes and a very minor rewrite, you can make the entire film with only 2 actors, as in the rare cases where a third character is present on screen at the same time, they're not really necessary. It's still a conversation between 2 people, just one with an observer. Now, with a good script and good actors, you could actually make that kind of spareness a feature rather than a problem. There have been good films with limited casts like that, but this is not such a project. The bulk of the supporting cast are not very good, and the sets look cheap and shoddy, which I guess is arguably authentic to the tenement environment they're supposed to depict, but they don't look the right kind of cheap for that. Yeah, the film doesn't look good. It's not acted well. And then there's another issue. Now, one of my geek heresies is that I don't think Highlander is a good film. It's got a rocking Queen soundtrack, I'll give you that, and there is some decent fight choreography going on, but that's not enough to excuse its multiple narrative sins, the most frequent and irritating of which is its deep, deep love of flashbacks. Huge sections of that movie are done in flashback form, to a point where at one stage characters in a flashback have a flashback. Now, perhaps the writer of Highlander saw Single Room Furnished as a kid and it sunk into his brain, because this may be the only movie I've ever seen that is even more in love with flashbacks. Now, part of that is due to the framing structure of Pop telling Maria stories about the past, of course, since that immediately makes all of those scenes become flashbacks. But the script is by no means satisfied with that. It is determined to delve deeper with characters in the flashback sequences, then having their own flashback sequences on at least 2 occasions, arguably 3, it depends how you interpret the scene. It's a clumsy device, clumsily overused, and it is a significant contributor to the film's overall lack of any forward momentum. Single Room Furnished ultimately comes up empty. Next time, up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky, Godzilla. Specifically, the original 1954 black and white Japanese film that created an international kaiju icon. It's a very different beast from the cartoon iteration whose theme song I just mangled. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.